The night was meant to be filled with joy and celebration, the kind of night people dream about all their lives. Laughter, music, and love were supposed to fill the air as two hearts became one. But instead, sirens echoed through a rain-soaked street in Quezon City. The sounds of celebration were replaced by chaos. A bride lay lifeless outside her own wedding reception, her white gown stained with blood and rain. Guests screamed in disbelief, the bouquet she once held crushed in the mud beside her. It was supposed to be her wedding night, but it became the night she died. Her name was Clarisse Navarro, 29 years old, a nurse, a daughter, and a friend loved by everyone who knew her. She had spent years building a life filled with hope and kindness. But the tragedy that ended her story did not come from a stranger or a jealous ex-lover. The person accused of killing her was her best friend and maid of honor, Marissa Cruz. They were inseparable for a decade, two women who called each other sisters. They shared dorm rooms, heartbreaks, secrets, and dreams. Clarisse was the light in every room, the one who never stopped believing in love. Marissa was quiet, loyal, always standing slightly behind her, grateful just to be near her best friend's glow. To the world, they were proof that friendship could last forever. But behind every smile, something darker had begun to grow. Envy, the kind that starts as admiration and ends as obsession. Before we begin, make sure you subscribe to our channel, where every day we uncover real stories of love, betrayal, and justice. Hit the bell icon so you never miss the moment when truth turns darker than fiction. In the months leading to Clarisse's wedding, friends noticed small cracks in what seemed like an unbreakable bond. Marissa's laughter sounded rehearsed, her compliments felt hollow. Clarisse brushed it off, believing that nothing could come between them. But jealousy doesn't arrive with a warning. It hides in affection, disguised as loyalty. And as the wedding day approached, it consumed everything Marissa once was. The night of the wedding was meant to be their happiest memory. Instead, it became the final chapter in a friendship destroyed by envy. Clarisse's dreams ended before she could walk down the aisle, and Marissa's life would soon unravel in the glare of police lights and headlines that shocked an entire nation. They had promised to stand by each other forever, and in the cruelest way imaginable, they did. 10 years before the tragedy, Clarisse Navarro and Marissa Cruz were inseparable. They met as nursing students in Cebu, two young women chasing the same dream of independence and purpose. Clarisse was radiant, confident, charming, and endlessly optimistic. She was the kind of person who filled every space she entered with warmth. Marissa, in contrast, was quiet, observant, and deeply self-conscious. Where Clarisse shined, Marissa blended into the background. Yet, despite their differences, the two became like sisters. They studied together, shared apartments, split meals, and whispered about their plans for the future. Clarisse's energy often carried them both through sleepless exam nights. She believed in Marissa more than Marissa believed in herself, encouraging her whenever doubt crept in. "You're going to make it," Clarisse would say. "We both will." And for a long time it felt true. After graduation, they remained close, but life began to tilt unevenly. Clarisse quickly found a stable position in a private hospital. She was admired by her colleagues, trusted by patients, and loved by everyone who met her. In time, she met Ethan Villanueva, a software engineer whose kindness matched her own. Their relationship blossomed quietly, naturally, and when he proposed, everyone in Clarisse's circle celebrated the love story that seemed destined. Marissa, however, struggled. Her jobs came and went, her savings evaporated faster than they grew, and each visit with Clarisse became a painful reminder of what she lacked. Clarisse, as generous as ever, continued to help her, covering rent, buying her small gifts, inviting her to family dinners. But beneath Marissa's grateful smile, envy had begun to form, small at first, like a whisper she ignored, then louder, until it became impossible to drown out. When Clarisse announced her engagement, she asked Marissa to be her maid of honor. Marissa said yes immediately, smiling through tears. The world saw her joy, but no one saw the bitterness twisting underneath. To everyone else, it looked like the perfect friendship, one woman preparing to marry the love of her life, the other standing proudly beside her. But in Marissa's heart, the balance had shifted. She was no longer the equal of her friend. She had become a spectator in Clarisse's story. Clarisse's life began moving faster. Engagement parties, wedding planning, and constant attention from friends and family. Marissa watched it all unfold, half admiring, half aching. Every conversation was about Clarisse's future, her ring, her gown, her honeymoon plans. For Marissa, every detail of Clarisse's happiness, the ring, the gown, the praise, became a reminder of her own emptiness. Clarisse noticed the distance but refused to believe envy could live between them. When Marissa grew quieter, she assumed her friend was simply tired or preoccupied. She never imagined that each smile might be an act of restraint. Clarisse believed in loyalty, and she believed in Marissa. That blind faith would later cost her everything. If you're new here, this is the kind of story we tell, real lives torn apart by love and envy. Subscribe now and stay till the end. What detectives later uncovered will shock you. As the months passed, Marissa's jealousy deepened. She began comparing herself to Clarisse in every way: her appearance, her career, her relationships. Clarisse's success became an obsession she couldn't escape. She started mimicking her friend's clothing style, changing her hair, even echoing her mannerisms. At first, people found it amusing. They said, "You two could be twins." Marissa smiled, but behind that smile was quiet resentment. Clarisse's family adored Marissa, calling her the loyal one, trusting her completely. She was welcome at every gathering, part of every plan. But even as she stood beside Clarisse in dress fittings and floral appointments, something inside her was unraveling. She smiled less, watched more. Every compliment Clarisse received felt like a slight against her. Every display of affection between Clarisse and Ethan became proof that she was alone. The more she tried to suppress her jealousy, the more it consumed her. Resentment turned into self-loathing, then into a silent, poisonous hatred. Yet to everyone else, nothing seemed wrong. The two women still posted photos together, captioned "Sisters Forever." But those who looked closely could see the change. Clarisse's cheerful expressions were matched by Marissa's fixed smile, her eyes empty, detached. In group chats, she spoke less. At gatherings, she stood at the edge of photos, watching. What began as a friendship built on love and shared dreams was slowly becoming a story of quiet rivalry, one that would soon turn fatal. Clarisse's life became the kind of story people admired online. Her engagement photos looked like something from a movie: the perfect dress, the perfect smile, and the perfect man. Every post she made was met with hearts and congratulations. Friends called her lucky, blessed, glowing. And in every photo, there was one face often beside her: Marissa Cruz, her maid of honor, her best friend, the sister she chose. But behind every like and every congratulatory message, another story was unfolding. Marissa watched those same photos late at night, the glow of her phone lighting her small, dimly lit apartment. Her thumb scrolled endlessly through Clarisse's posts, her eyes tracing the ring, the smile, the man. She read every comment, every couple goals and beautiful bride, and each one tightened something inside her chest. At first, she told herself she was happy for her best friend. She shared the posts, left sweet comments, even joked about being the forever third wheel. But in private, she felt something she had never admitted to anyone: jealousy. It started quietly as an ache, then it grew sharper. Clarisse had everything: love, stability, admiration. Marissa had none of it. In the weeks that followed, she began to imitate her best friend without realizing it. She bought similar dresses, styled her hair the same way, even copied Clarisse's photo captions. When friends noticed and laughed, she laughed too, pretending it was harmless fun. But deep inside, she wasn't trying to celebrate Clarisse, she was trying to become her. But imitation wasn't admiration anymore, it was obsession. Clarisse's life had become a mirror Marissa couldn't stop staring into, a mirror that only reflected what she lacked. When Clarisse spoke about Ethan, her fiancé, Marissa would smile, nod, and listen. She gave advice, offered to help with wedding details, even accompanied Clarisse to gown fittings. But the smile never reached her eyes anymore, and at night, when she was alone, her thoughts turned darker. She began sending Clarisse anonymous text messages from fake numbers, cruel little whispers meant to seed doubt. "Are you sure Ethan's faithful?" one read. "He's been seen with someone else." Another said, "He's not who you think he is." Clarisse showed the messages to Marissa, upset and confused, seeking comfort. And Marissa, feigning shock, would hug her and say, "Don't worry, you have me." Soon the lies became more sophisticated. Marissa fabricated screenshots that looked like private messages between Ethan and another woman. She showed them to Clarisse, pretending to have found them accidentally. For a brief time, it worked. Clarisse grew distant from Ethan, unsure of what to believe. But Ethan confronted her with evidence of the truth. The messages were fake, the numbers untraceable. When Clarisse apologized, Ethan forgave her, but something shifted. He grew uneasy around Marissa, sensing an undercurrent he couldn't name. Clarisse dismissed it as paranoia. "She's like my sister," she told him. "She would never hurt me." But Marissa could feel that something had changed. The lie had failed, and the mask of friendship began to crack. Jealousy doesn't arrive with a knife. It comes quietly with a smile. From that moment, her envy hardened into hatred, not the loud, violent kind, but the silent one that festers beneath the surface. Marissa's obsession deepened. She started following Ethan online, watching his activity, tracking his likes and comments. Every time he posted something romantic about Clarisse, she felt invisible. It wasn't just jealousy anymore, it was competition. She wanted to prove she could have what Clarisse had, that she was just as desirable, just as worthy. One night, after a few glasses of wine, Marissa messaged Ethan directly. Her tone was friendly, playful, too familiar. Ethan ignored her at first, but when she persisted, he confronted her in person, politely but firmly. He told her to stop. That rejection humiliated her. For Marissa, it wasn't just a refusal. It was confirmation that she was, and always would be, the shadow in Clarisse's light. Clarisse never learned about the messages. Marissa smiled as though nothing had happened, but something inside her had crossed a line. Jealousy, when left unspoken, doesn't fade. It transforms. It stops wanting what someone else has and starts wanting to destroy it. Marissa began distancing herself emotionally, but not physically. She stayed close enough to appear loyal, to keep up the illusion of sisterhood. When Clarisse talked about the wedding, Marissa offered help with a smile, volunteering for every task. The closer the wedding came, the more her rage grew beneath the surface. At night, she replayed old memories, the way Clarisse used to comfort her, the way people praised her beauty, the way Ethan looked at her with admiration. Each memory became fuel for resentment. She told herself she deserved more, that Clarisse had taken what should have been hers. In her mind, she wasn't the villain. She was the one who had been overlooked too long. Clarisse noticed the tension. There were moments when Marissa's tone turned sharp, her jokes a little too cruel. But Clarisse brushed it off. That was her flaw. She always believed the best in people, especially the ones she loved. Soon the wedding day loomed, and Clarisse's excitement was boundless. She sent Marissa messages filled with gratitude, thanking her for being there through everything, for being the friend she could always count on. Marissa replied with hearts and exclamation marks, tears streaming down her face as she typed. They weren't tears of love or happiness anymore. They were tears of something darker, something irreversible. In every friendship, there is a line, and once jealousy crosses it, there is no turning back. Clarisse's final message to Marissa before her death was simple. "I'm so lucky to have you by my side." And somewhere in that message, in those innocent words, Marissa decided what she would do next. A week before the wedding, the excitement around Clarisse's big day reached its peak. Her friends were busy finalizing details, her family was preparing to welcome Ethan's relatives, and everything seemed set for a perfect celebration. Clarisse, ever trusting, handed much of the final coordination to her best friend and maid of honor, Marissa Cruz. Marissa had offered eagerly, saying she wanted to take the pressure off the bride. Clarisse didn't think twice. Marissa had been by her side through everything. She was family. But this was exactly what Marissa needed: control, access, and time. Behind her smile, she had already begun to weave her plan. Every spreadsheet, every phone call, every errand she handled gave her more power. She knew Clarisse's schedule, her passwords, her location at every moment. It wasn't just about envy anymore. It had become an obsession with control. Clarisse's happiness had to be ruined, and Marissa wanted to be the one to ruin it. She reached out to Miguel, an old boyfriend she hadn't spoken to in years. Miguel was the kind of man who owed favors and never asked too many questions. Marissa told him that Ethan had been abusing Clarisse and that she needed help confronting him. Her voice trembled convincingly as she described the fictional bruises, the fear her best friend supposedly lived with. "I just want him scared," she said. "I don't want her to marry a man like that." Miguel hesitated at first, but Marissa's tone, part desperation, part righteousness, convinced him. He agreed to help her teach him a lesson. The plan came together quietly. Marissa would lure Ethan to a villa outside the city, somewhere secluded but not suspicious. Miguel and another man would confront him, rough him up, and make him confess to the imaginary abuse. She promised it wouldn't go too far, but Marissa knew from the start this was no harmless setup. She wasn't after Ethan's confession, she was after Clarisse's destruction. 2 days before the wedding, Marissa told Clarisse she had planned a private girls' night to celebrate their friendship before the big day. "No stress, no guests," she said with a grin. "Just us like the old times." Clarisse was touched. After months of planning, the idea of one quiet evening with her best friend felt perfect. That night, the two women met at Marissa's apartment. The atmosphere was warm and nostalgic, music playing softly, a bottle of red wine open on the table, laughter filling the air. Marissa kept her act flawless. She toasted to their friendship, to Clarisse's love story, to sisters forever. Clarisse smiled, her guard down, her trust absolute. Marissa had already mixed a sedative into Clarisse's wine glass earlier in the evening. Within minutes, Clarisse began to feel dizzy. She laughed about being tired, joking that the stress of wedding planning was catching up to her. Marissa helped her to the couch, speaking gently, brushing her hair from her face. "Just rest," she whispered. "Everything's going to be fine." Once Clarisse drifted into unconsciousness, Marissa's demeanor changed. Her hands shook, but her expression hardened. She took Clarisse's phone, used her friend's fingerprint to unlock it, and began typing. The messages she sent to Ethan were carefully crafted, filled with anger and accusation. "I know what you did. I know about the other woman. I can't believe I trusted you. Meet me at the villa if you have anything to say." She sent the message, deleted traces of her activity, and then unlocked Clarisse's banking app to transfer a small amount of money to her own account, just enough to make the digital trail confusing later. Marissa waited until midnight. She called Miguel, told him the location, and said the plan was ready. "He'll be there," she promised. "Just make sure he gets what he deserves." But as the night went on, something inside her snapped. The rage that had built for months demanded more. In her mind, Clarisse was the source of every humiliation, every failure, every invisible ache. She no longer wanted to scare Ethan. She wanted Clarisse erased. No one knows exactly what happened next, but by the time Marissa called Miguel again, her tone was different, calm, almost detached. "It's done," she said. "Just make sure the story fits." Early the next morning, Ethan received the message Marissa had sent from Clarisse's phone. He was confused, frightened, and rushed to the villa, thinking his fiancée was in distress. But when he arrived, he found police cars and flashing lights. Clarisse's body was inside, lifeless, her wedding ring still on her hand. She had been strangled. The text messages pointed to Ethan as the killer. To the police, it looked like a lover's quarrel turned violent. He was detained immediately. Marissa arrived soon after, crying hysterically, playing the perfect grieving friend. She embraced Clarisse's mother, sobbing uncontrollably. "She was my sister," she wailed. "How could he do this?" Cameras captured her tears. Reporters labeled her the brave maid of honor. But grief has a texture, and hers didn't feel right. Investigators noticed inconsistencies. The timing of her arrival, her detailed knowledge of what had happened, her overly rehearsed statements. Forensic tests later revealed traces of sedatives in Clarisse's bloodstream, and surveillance footage showed Marissa leaving her apartment hours before the supposed girls' night began, carrying a small duffel bag. When police examined Clarisse's phone, they found the fingerprint logs didn't match her activity patterns. A partial print belonging to Marissa was embedded under the glass screen protector. The text timestamps were too close together to have been written by someone in distress. As the truth began to unravel, Marissa's perfect act began to crack. Her public displays of grief grew more erratic, her interviews inconsistent. One day she blamed Ethan, the next she blamed herself. Finally, when confronted with the evidence, she broke down. "I didn't mean to kill her," she cried. "I just wanted her to feel what I felt. I wanted her to hurt." But jealousy doesn't stop at pain. It demands everything. Marissa's plan had succeeded in the worst way possible. She had destroyed Clarisse, framed Ethan, and condemned herself. What began as envy ended as tragedy. The smiling bridesmaid had become both mourner and murderer. She planned every detail of her best friend's wedding. She just didn't plan to let her live to see it. The investigation that followed Clarisse Navarro's death quickly became one of the most shocking and talked about cases in the country. At first, it seemed open and shut. The fiancé, Ethan Villanueva, was the obvious suspect. The text messages found on Clarisse's phone painted him as a man accused of infidelity, summoned to a secluded villa, and arriving just as his bride-to-be was found dead. But something about the story didn't fit. The evidence was too neat, too convenient, and the timeline too precise, almost rehearsed. Detectives began to question the sequence of events. Ethan insisted he had received Clarisse's message late at night and drove straight to the villa in panic. But forensics revealed that Clarisse's death occurred hours before he even arrived. The time stamps on her phone, the lividity of the body, the temperature readings, all pointed to a carefully constructed deception. Whoever had done this wanted Ethan to take the blame. When investigators reviewed the security cameras in the area, they discovered something damning. Hours before the murder, footage captured a woman matching Marissa Cruz's description entering the villa. She wasn't alone. Two unidentified men followed her, carrying what looked like bags or equipment. None of them appeared again on camera until long after the time of death. Detectives were stunned. Why would the bride's best friend, the maid of honor, be at the villa before the bride and groom? And who were the men with her? The next piece of evidence made everything worse. The security footage from a nearby gas station showed Marissa's car leaving the scene around 11:30 p.m., nearly 3 hours before Ethan's arrival. Inside Clarisse's apartment, investigators found an empty bottle of prescription sedatives with Marissa's fingerprints. The same drug was later confirmed in Clarisse's bloodstream. In Marissa's bank records, police found a large cash withdrawal made 2 days before the murder, the same day she contacted her ex-boyfriend, Miguel, to help her with a personal matter. When Miguel was brought in for questioning, the entire story began to unravel. At first, he denied everything, insisting he had no part in the crime. But after hours of interrogation and being shown the surveillance footage, his resolve broke. He confessed that Marissa had approached him with a story about protecting her best friend from an abusive fiancé. She said she only wanted to scare Ethan, to make him confess to things he'd done. "She made me believe she was trying to save her," he told detectives. "She said Clarisse was in danger." Miguel admitted to renting the villa in his name, arranging for a friend to help him set up the plan. But what he didn't expect was what happened next. "When I got there," he said, "Clarisse was already dead." For investigators, that statement was the turning point. It confirmed what they already suspected. Clarisse hadn't been the victim of a crime of passion. She had been the target of a planned betrayal. Every clue, every move, every piece of evidence pointed back to one person, the woman who had sworn to stand beside her at the altar. Every piece of evidence led back to the same person, the one who was supposed to protect her. Detectives confronted Marissa with what they knew. At first, she maintained her innocence, insisting she had only gone to the villa to help Clarisse and Miguel sort out a misunderstanding. But as the hours dragged on and the evidence stacked higher, the fingerprints, the sedatives, the bank records, Miguel's confession, her facade began to crack. Finally, she broke down. Her voice trembled as she said, "I didn't mean to kill her. I just wanted her to feel pain like I did. I wanted her to lose something." Tears streamed down her face, but her words chilled everyone in the room. She described years of feeling invisible next to Clarisse, how everyone adored her, how every compliment to Clarisse felt like a wound. "I was her shadow," she whispered. "No one ever saw me." But jealousy never stops at pain. It demands everything. Her confession shocked even the most experienced investigators. It wasn't about love, money, or revenge. It was about envy so deep it had consumed her humanity. She had planned the perfect setup, a crime where Ethan would take the fall and she would emerge as the grieving best friend, the sympathetic figure everyone would comfort. For a few days, she succeeded. The public mourned with her, praised her for her strength, and shared photos of her and Clarisse smiling together, calling their friendship unbreakable. But lies always have an expiration date. When the news broke that Marissa Cruz had been arrested for Clarisse Navarro's murder, the country erupted. Social media flooded with disbelief. People reposted their old photos, captioning them with words like, "How could she?" And no one saw it coming. The case was soon dubbed the Bridesmaid Betrayal. Commentators discussed it on talk shows. Psychologists called it a case study in pathological envy, how love and friendship can curdle into hatred when comparison becomes obsession. At the press conference announcing the arrest, one detective summed it up bluntly. "The saddest thing about this case is that Clarisse trusted the wrong person. It's that her killer was someone she loved like family." The arrest sent ripples through every community that followed the story. Mothers warned their daughters to be careful who they trusted. Friends questioned their own relationships. The idea that someone so close could harbor so much malice shook people to their core. Inside her cell, Marissa reportedly spent her first night in silence. Witnesses said she stared at the wall, unblinking, as if still trying to convince herself it hadn't happened. She would later tell investigators that she didn't remember everything, that she lost control, and never meant for it to go that far. But to the world, her tears no longer mattered. What began as a story of friendship had turned into a national tragedy, a chilling reminder that the most dangerous kind of hatred doesn't always come from strangers. Sometimes it comes from the people who know you best, the ones who have memorized your weaknesses, the ones who smile the widest in your photos. Marissa Cruz had stood beside Clarisse Navarro through every milestone of her life, until she decided that if she couldn't have the same happiness, no one could. She planned her best friend's wedding. She chose the flowers, the dress, the music. And in the end, she chose the moment that would end her life. It wasn't love that killed Clarisse Navarro. It was envy, disguised as friendship, nurtured by years of comparison. The courtroom was silent except for the sound of shuffling papers and quiet sobs from the gallery. The case of People versus Marissa Cruz had drawn nationwide attention. Reporters filled the benches, cameras waited outside, and the name, the Bridesmaid Betrayal, dominated every headline. The public had already chosen a side. Clarisse Navarro, the innocent bride, had become a symbol of trust destroyed. Marissa, the best friend turned killer, was the embodiment of jealousy and betrayal. When the trial began, prosecutors laid out the story piece by piece, the digital evidence, the financial records, and the confessions. Every message, every photograph, every deleted text formed a picture of premeditated deceit. They told the court how Marissa, driven by envy, planned her friend's murder to appear as a crime of passion. She drugged Clarisse, staged text messages to frame Ethan, and carefully crafted her role as the grieving best friend. Miguel, the ex-boyfriend who had helped her rent the villa, was brought to the stand. His hands trembled as he spoke. He told the court how Marissa manipulated him with lies about abuse and danger, convincing him he was helping Clarisse. "She said Ethan would hurt her if we didn't do something," he said. "I believed her. I didn't know she planned to kill her." His voice cracked when he described finding Clarisse lifeless. "She was already gone," he whispered. The defense tried to paint Marissa as emotionally unstable, a woman blinded by insecurity and abandonment. Her lawyer argued that years of trauma and mental illness had distorted her perception of reality. They claimed she never intended to kill Clarisse, only to scare her, to make her feel what she had felt for so long, rejection. But the prosecution countered with chilling precision. They presented the timeline, the drug purchase, the staged messages, and the cash withdrawal. Each detail revealed forethought, not impulse. Ethan's testimony was the most heartbreaking moment of the trial. He spoke softly, holding a photo of Clarisse in her wedding dress. His words silenced the courtroom. "She died believing her best friend would stand beside her at the altar," he said. "Instead, she stood over her body." Even the judge paused before continuing. When Marissa took the stand, her tone was calm but hollow. She admitted to being jealous, to feeling invisible, to hating the way Clarisse seemed to have everything. "I was tired of being the shadow," she said. I just wanted her to know what it felt like to lose something. She cried as she spoke, but her tears failed to move the jury. Her confession only made the tragedy more unbearable, not a crime born of rage, but of envy that had been festering for years. The jury deliberated for less than a day. When they returned, the verdict was unanimous, guilty of premeditated murder. Marissa Cruz was sentenced to life in prison without parole. As the decision was read aloud, she showed no reaction, no tears, no anger, only a blank stare. Ethan bowed his head. Clarisse's family wept quietly in the front row, holding hands. Outside the courthouse, crowds gathered with candles and flowers. Strangers left messages that read, "For Clarisse, a reminder to choose friends carefully." The case became more than a tragedy. It became a national warning. News anchors dissected every angle. Psychologists appeared on talk shows, calling it a modern cautionary tale about jealousy and comparison. "Social media makes envy louder," one expert said. "It turns admiration into competition. We see someone else's happiness and begin to measure our worth against it, and that's where it begins to destroy us." Marissa's prison cell became her world, a small, gray space filled with echoes of what she had done. Reports said she rarely spoke to anyone, spending hours staring out a small, barred window. Once she wrote a letter to Clarisse's mother, apologizing. It was never opened. Clarisse's story lived on. Her family created a small foundation to support victims of domestic and emotional abuse, not because Clarisse suffered it, but because she believed in kindness, even toward those who didn't deserve it. Her photograph, smiling in her wedding gown, became the face of the campaign. Clarisse Navarro believed in love, loyalty, and friendship, and that belief cost her everything. Her story reminds us that envy doesn't always shout. Sometimes it smiles, it hugs, and it waits for the perfect moment to strike. And when it does, it destroys not only the person we love, but everything human left inside us.